Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Neil, and I'm one of the pastors here at the Edge Church. We are a hybrid community that meets once a month as a large group in person, along with other many smaller group opportunities to gather both in person and online throughout the week. If you'd like more information on how to be a part of what we're doing here at the Edge, email Hillary Start at hillary@edgeaurora.com. I am super excited to kick off this brand new series called Alpha. The series is based on the Alpha course and the Alpha film series that was originally developed by a UK pastor named Nicky Gumbel. And it was first implemented outside of his church in 1990. The Alpha film and course is designed to introduce participants to the basics of the Christian faith. And the whole idea is that it's a safe space for people to ask questions. It's non-judgmental. So in light of that, instead of me continuing to talk about what it is, enjoy this short video to help you get acquainted with what Alpha is like.
Perfect. Yes. We all have that person in our lives. That neighbor we pass by every day outside our homes. That coworker we see at the office 5 days a week. Or those friends we catch up with every once in a while. People we wish could know and experience the love of God. How do we share it? Where do we even start? Deep inside, we know that it'll cost us something to open up our lives and share our faith. It takes time, vulnerability, sacrifice, the risk of rejection. But this is our call, to open our lives and to share Christ with the people close to us. Because it's only through opening your life up that spaces for honest conversations are possible. Spaces where people can truly be themselves and explore the deepest parts of life with people they know and trust. That's why we're running Alpha. It's a course over several weeks where you can invite your friends to explore life's biggest questions over a meal. It's a chance for you to invite that person into an honest conversation about faith. Because when it's hard to find the moment, or the words, or the courage, you can simply invite. Alpha, who will you invite?
This series is going to cover some of life's big questions that people have about life and about what the Christian faith looks like. And in order to keep us all on the same page, this series is going to coincide with the Alpha course that is offered to adults in our community. Anyone who is curious about what this faith looks like can come and be a part of what we're doing here. We're also doing it with our kids in the youth group, and so they can explore these questions as well. And what are these questions? Well, one of the biggest questions that we have in our lives is there more to life than this? Is there more to life than this? I believe it's a question that most of us, or probably actually all of us, get to at some point or another in our lives. Because sometimes we get there because of frustration in a job or struggle in our marriage, or sometimes it's even when everything's going really well. We finally get that promotion and we thought it was going to deliver this amazing, forever rush of endorphins, and the reality is just not quite that good. It wasn't as satisfying as we really imagined that it would be. I love this quote from the actor Jim Carrey. He's one of the funniest comedians and actors, I think, of my generation. And he said this: I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer. Now, here's the thing. That would probably be the kind of advice that you'd expect to hear from me, a pastor, right? Something that I might share with the congregation, because I'm kind of supposed to say that kind of thing. But it's truly quite an incredible statement when you realize that Jim Carrey in the year 2021 is worth somewhere close to $200 million. Yet, we all long for more, regardless of how much we have, whether we have $2, $2 million, $20 million, $200 million, or more. We long for more. And we think that this number that we get, this experience that we'll have, will suddenly make us happy enough. I've certainly fallen for it. I remember as a kid watching my dad climb multiple corporate ladders in different corporations across different states throughout the Midwest. And I remember when we moved to Minnesota, he took a job as a vice president of marketing for a major insurance company. And I felt the sense that we'd moved up financially. As a matter of fact, back then, I never wanted for anything. I could pretty much have whatever I wanted. My parents just provided that for me. But I also felt the saddest and the most alone I have ever felt in my entire life. I was so overwhelmed with depression some days that I had a hard time staying awake past 9 p.m. And I had an even more difficult time waking up to go to school again the next morning. I remember my mom was super unsettled with the move too. And I overheard her say things to my dad that brought me trouble inside. I remember one time she said, "I wish that we could make the kind of money that our friends make." And I remember I looked around the corner and I saw my dad's countenance change, and I saw the heaviness fall on him, where I know that if he had said what he was thinking, he probably would have thought, is there more to life than this? But at that time, there didn't really seem to be an answer. So he kept chasing that elusive American dream, that elusive goal of that having enough to make him feel completely satisfied. But his more dedicated pursuit to that thing, to finding that experience and getting that dollar amount, it just led to what I perceived to be an ever-increasing sense of dissatisfaction with him and also in my mom. But even though our experiences often show that accumulating more things and vacations and Instagrammable moments, it won't satisfy that deep sense of longing, we still chase after them, don't we? We just do. A few years back, I looked up the fate of lottery winners across the country over the course of a decade. I wanted to see how their lives turned out because think about this. They win these millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, close to $1 billion. They had access to everything they wanted. So how did their lives turn out? And it was absolutely frightening to see the results. Alcoholism and drug addiction, people turning to prostitution, greed of all kinds, greed that came out of the woodwork of families and friends and people that they didn't even know online asking them for help, but also their own greed. And I saw suicides and I saw stories of murder, all because people suddenly got everything that they thought would make them happy. Why is it then that when we get those things that we think are going to make us the happiest, we still aren't really that happy? But let's be real for a minute. I'm guessing that even though you've heard the results of some of the lottery winners, that all of us would still be willing to give it a shot. Because deep down, we think that somehow it would be different for us and that we would be satisfied. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 20, it says, "Death and destruction are never satisfied, and neither are human eyes." Well, those are weird things to tie together. Death and destruction and human eyes. What does that even mean? Basically, it means this, that since the first moment that sin entered the human experience through the very first people on earth, death and destruction have ruled this natural world. 1 out of every 1 people will die. Every single one of us will. And the human eye is the same as death and destruction, because in that same way, the human tendency is always to want for more. We look around and we see something that we don't have and we want it, and we're convinced we're going to be more satisfied if we have it. But think about this. No matter how great your presents were in 2020 for Christmas, I'm guessing that most of you couldn't even tell me what you got, because you've already moved on to wanting other things in the first half of 2021. And the second half of 2021, you'll want other things as well. But the Bible paints this alternate reality that we really can grasp. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21, it says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." But since you can't take money with you when you leave this life, we all know that theoretically, you have to ask yourself, what is this treasure that Jesus is instructing us to store up in heaven if we can't bring money with us? It's very simple. It is about living a life that is rich towards people and to God. And really, it's summed up in an Old Testament book. The prophet Micah, in chapter 6, verse 8, he said, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." That's powerful. It's simple and it's powerful. This week, we commemorated the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. And for some of you who weren't alive when 9/11 occurred, let me just explain a little bit about what it was. Hijackers, they took over 4 United States commercial airliners, and they flew planes into both towers of the World Trade Center. They also flew a plane into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and they ended up flying a plane that crash-landed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The total number of people killed on 9/11 was very close to 3,000. And around 25,000 other people were injured that day. It's now been 20 years, and it's really easy for us to hear those numbers and to sort of brush over it. So it could be good for us to make it more personal. I came across the story of a man named Sujo John. He grew up in Calcutta, India. And right before 9/11 happened, he and his wife moved to New York City and got jobs in the Trade Center. Here is his story.
Yeah, I just have to duck for the... Ready? My life journey started in the city of Calcutta in the nation of India. Thought my calling would be in business. So I ended up with a bachelor's in business, an MBA in business. I meet this young girl, fall in love, get married in January of 2000. And in February of 2001, I pack up my bags and leave Calcutta, India for a new life in America. I left home with 2 suitcases and $50 in my wallet. Land in New York City on a cold day. In a few weeks of getting to America, I find work on the 81st floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. My wife Mary, she finds work on the 71st floor of the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Everything was now going so well for us. And here rolled in September 2001. This is an exciting month. My wife is now, 4 months pregnant with our first child. But I happened to also pick up this book called The Prayer of Jabez that first week of September. And that book really got me thinking. And I started asking these questions. God, what is my purpose of having moved to America? Is it all about the success and fame that I can find in this country? Or is there something more? It is the most beautiful, clear day on the East Coast. I'm on the 81st floor of the North Tower. I sent out an email to someone that would go to my church saying, something's happening to me this morning. I know there's a call of God upon my life. I've just been chasing stuff in America. I want to be used of God. It's 8:05 in the morning, and I hit the send button on my email. I'm standing by this fax machine, trying to send some documents out to our office in Philadelphia. when I hear this incredible explosion. Had now come crashing into our tower. What followed was the building started shaking violently. Walls began to cave down. I started seeing things fall all around us. Jet fuel by then had made its way down onto our floor. Fire breaks out all around us. So we start fighting our way through the fire, make our way onto that stairwell. Thousands of people now joining us onto that stairwell. The fear of death written on the face of everyone. We hear another explosion. This is the second plane crashing into the second tower. I'm trying to reach my wife. I'm trying to reach her through my cell phone. I borrow the phones of all the people that are with me, but cell phones just wouldn't work. And I'm saying, God, if this building is going to go down with us, I'm never going to see my wife again. I'm never going to see the child she's carrying. I get to this level which is called the plaza. But now this place of life, this place of just exuberance where life would be celebrated, has now been turned into a place of death, a place of destruction, as I see hundreds of bodies of people that jumped out of the buildings, people who were in those planes. I start walking towards the South Tower. Had no idea about what was about to happen. 15-20 feet away from this building, when I suddenly realized that the ground that I'm standing on, the ground around me is shaking. I felt like I was being sucked into some kind of vacuum that was being created around me. I hear another incredible roar. Thought it was a bomb, but this is not a bomb. The building I'd approached, the South Tower, was finally imploding and going down. When I was about 9 years of age, I watched my only sister die to leukemia, and it did not make sense to me. If there is a loving God, if there is a God who is interested and involved in the affairs of men, then why is there death? Why is there suffering? I looked around and there's 15 or 20 people around me, and by then we had huddled together. And now this thought comes to my mind. These people that are with you, where are they going without Jesus? And till that moment in my life, I was a closet Christian. I would never be very vocal or verbal about my faith. But facing death, I feel this boldness to speak up for Jesus. And I started crying out Jesus, and I asked those 15, 20 people to call upon the name of the Lord. The most incredible thing happens. Not one tried to argue with me or debate with me. But as I started calling upon the name of the Lord, they followed in unison. And I could hear these people cry Jesus with me for a few minutes. After about 20 minutes, I'm surprised that I'm still alive. I'm plastered with soot and glass. I could not breathe. The soot and the ash was getting into my lungs. I decided to crawl, feel my way back to that place where I had prayed with those people, to only realize that these people who had just prayed with me, they did not make it out alive. Their bodies were smashed and crushed. I said, God, they just call upon your name, and how come they not make it? But I felt the Lord saying, Sujo, they made their peace with me in their dying moments, and they're resting with me in my presence. And now something amazing happens. A red light begins to flash to the soot and to the smoke. The light now leads us out of the pit, and I'm trying to run out of ground zero, when suddenly another roar. I turn back, and this is the North Tower collapsing. I'm out of the debris. By now the towers have collapsed. Both of them have collapsed. Dust, smoke, ash, balls of fire rising out of ground zero. And I'm sitting right in the middle of one of the streets of New York City, wondering, God, why did you spare my life? For sure, my wife is dead. I had now given up hope about my pregnant wife. I felt impressed I should walk into a store that was right across to me. A young girl from the store comes out, pulls me in. She started removing glass from my hair and she says, "Let me call your family for you." I told her what I thought had happened to my wife. She takes my cell phone, and as she's trying to pull some numbers out of my cell phone rings for the very first time that day in that girl's hand. She hands me back the phone. I flip my phone, I see my wife's caller ID, and I'm thinking it's someone else calling me with the news that your wife is dead. So I picked up the call with a lot of fear, thinking that would be the worst news of my life. But when I said hello, it's my wife on the other side. Her life was spared. She tells me what happened to her. She wanted to go to work early that day, but that morning she was late to work. And now we meet each other late that day. It was the most amazing moment. From just sheer fear that each of us thought the other was dead, now finally reunited. That night I said, "God, I am done chasing the things that's been on my heart. I've been chasing success, fame, financial security, but from now on, I want to be chasing that which is in your heart. And I'm convinced that all that's in your heart is people from all over the world, many of them who have never heard your name even once. So God, I want to be a proclaimer of the good news of Jesus Christ. I want to redeem my time. So God, here's a surrendered life. Would you rewrite the story of my life?" My name is Sujo John, and I am second.
I can tell you that in my life, I've been thankful for what I see as the grace of God, allowing me to become dissatisfied with life and to actually long for something more, much like Sujo did. I'm grateful that God doesn't leave me to become satisfied from playing in a puddle when the oceans of eternal life are awaiting me. When I was a senior in college, God invaded my life after I prayed a simple prayer, and it was basically this: "Lord, if you're there, please reveal yourself to me." And in his love for me and in his love for all people who are willing to call on his name, he did just that. And I remember surrendering my life to the one who describes himself in the Gospels as the way, the truth, and the life. Because in my experience, in my way, in my truth, ultimately my life felt too uncertain. Because the foundation of my life always shifted based on what I wanted that day or what I thought I should be doing in my future. It was all about my standard, and I came to realize that the reality of my life is that my standard is too fickle to be a standard for anyone, including for myself. Jesus described that there are two ways that all people can choose to live life. It's in this story known as the parable of the wise and foolish builders, and it's found in Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. It says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." In our remaining time today, I just want to briefly describe what Jesus meant in the Gospel of John chapter 14, verse 6, when he said to his disciples, "I am the way and the truth and the life." Let's talk briefly. What does it mean that when Jesus says that he is the way? First of all, you have to understand the setting. Jesus' disciples were terrified. They felt like if they ever got to this point where they couldn't see Jesus, and Jesus was explaining that he was about to die and leave them, they were terrified because they walked for 3 years with him and they witnessed him do miracles of all kinds right before their eyes. He healed people and he calmed storms. He did all these supernatural things, and they were convinced that they wouldn't have any sense of direction once he was out of their sight. So Jesus was conveying to them that because they knew him, they were secure. Think of it like this. If you have ever had security in a grandparent or a parent or a friend or in a relationship, wherever they are becomes home to you. Home is not about a location, it's about a person. It's about the experience of that person. And Jesus was saying that to his disciples, and he says to us today, if we would just entrust our lives to him, we know the way because he is the way. So what does it mean that Jesus is the truth? That is probably the strangest of the statements. We can speak things that are true. It's wise for us to listen to others and decide, is what this person's saying to me or about me true or not? Is the thing that I'm about to say true or not? But we can't claim to be the truth, because by definition, truth is a reality that exists outside of human experience. It is found outside of ourselves. So Jesus was making this absolutely groundbreaking claim with this statement. He is saying that he is the truth. Not only is he saying that what he says is true and what he does is true, but that he lives outside of the human experience. And he is the full embodiment of the reality of all that is true. That is just mind-blowing. In John chapter 1, verse 14, we get this description of Jesus, which is honestly equally mind-blowing. It says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And then finally, this statement, Jesus is the life. What does that mean? Let's go back again to the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Jesus is life. Jesus gave life, and that life shines in the darkness wherever it goes. So is there more to life than this? I have to admit that as a Christian, and I've been a Christian for over 20 years, I still ask this question. I ask this question. There are plenty of times that I want for more, or I wonder if there is something else I should do, or some other path I should take, or some other experience that I could have that would make me feel more content. But no matter how much I question moments of my experience, I am still centered on the truth of the reality of Jesus Christ. That Jesus is the God who came to earth to live in a new way, to die for my sins, to rise from the dead, and one day it is the same God who will make all things new, the same God who will restore all things that are broken in my life and in yours. If you're wondering if there is more to life than this, I want to encourage you to pray a simple prayer. I dare you to do it. The same prayer that I prayed when I was in college. God, if you're there, reveal yourself to me. I can tell you this, I don't know how he'll do it, but I know he'll do it. He will speak to you in a way that makes sense to you. He will answer you because He is good. In the Bible, in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 4, it says that God wants all people to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. In a few minutes, we'll close with a final song. But first, here are several questions that we would love for you to consider in your house churches or wherever you're gathering this week. The first question is this: what is the purpose of your life? And how did you come to that conclusion? The second one is, if you're a Christian, can you relate to Suzhou's struggle with being a closet Christian? How might you break free from that? And the final question, have you ever asked God to reveal Himself to you? If you have, I'd love it if you shared what happened. God bless you, and we'll see you for the next week of Alpha.